You might have noticed that all of my kukuris have a rat tail tang instead of a full tang. Let me tell you why. Here in the United States, a lot of people are obsessed with the full tang, and they base this opinion on their experience with knives like the K-bar fighting knife. Now, I don't have a K-bar, so this PAL RH36 is going to have to stand in its place. You notice it has a 1/8 inch spine, so we compare that to this Himalayan imports. The Kukuri House World War. And then the Kailash Historic Service issue. So, knives like this size, they've got the spine of the 1/8 inch, and then it's maybe this thick where it meets the blade, and it tapers down to a really narrow part down here. So, constant chopping and batoning puts a lot of shock waves where the tang meets the blade. So, each shock wave causes a little bit of bending, and the tang eventually fails. So, you notice on the Kukuris, you've got this great big wide spine, and a whole lot wider down here. So there's a whole lot more metal to absorb shock waves. Kukuris are made out of 50-160 spring steel. And knives like this Himalayan imports and Kukuri House, they have what's called a traditional heat treat. This means that the edge is harder than the spine. The idea is that the softer spine will have more flex while chopping. This should absorb more of the shock waves before they ever reach the tang. Now, take note of the cutout in the blade, the cho. Now, the original purpose of the cho has been lost to time, and there's a lot of people that give explanations as to what it is, but it still has a design purpose. During chopping, each of the cutout has a microscopic flex, and it snaps back in place. So this spring motion will absorb some of the shock waves before they reach the tang, and it will send some of the shock waves back to the spine. So the tang receives less stress, less shock waves during chopping. Also, if you look at antique kukuris, you'll see that they only have a partial tang that goes only part way down and not all the way through the handle. Even though rat tail tangs have plenty of strength, there are still reasons to get a full tang. The full tang would have a heavier handle, acting as a counterbalance to the longer, heavier blade, which would completely change the balance. Also, if your handle scales cracked in the field, it'd be a whole lot easier to manufacture handle scales and then put them on with duct tape or cordage. But one thing to note with the full tang, after time, natural materials shrink. So you notice this old Himalayan imports, my fingernail catches on the plate. So this has had a slight shrinkage over the time that I've had it. So with a full tang, you would eventually have tang sticking out on the back or the front or both. So you would have to decide, did you want to leave it that way being uncomfortable, or do you want to remove the metal so it's flush with the scales, or would you want to just replace the scales?